Fast-moving changes are subtle but palpable as Cubans challenge government officials online, post photos of filthy school bathrooms, and drag what was one of the world's least connected countries into the digital age.
Free Talk Live.
Cuba, a place that we've paid a little bit of attention to over the years here on Free Talk Live. Of course, Fidel Castro, he ended up dying, right? He's finally
as we
dead.
all do.
Yeah.
At some point or another, you will leap from the mortal coil.
Before he died, he gave up control of Cuba to his brother Raul,
who will also die.
But before he does, and before he did, Raul kind of changed things a little bit to give people a little bit more control over the property that they don't actually own in Cuba, to allow them to, decide what crops to grow, that kind of thing. So giving people a little bit more latitude. And now Cuban voters, according to AlJazeera.com, have ratified a new constitution within the last week. And
I'm sure it's really great, and they won't follow it either.
Just give them 200 years.
Let's talk about what it does, allegedly, here. Now, I don't think Al Jazeera is correct in saying that it legalizes the free market. It certainly doesn't do that, but that's what they're claiming. So we'll get into it coming up on Free Talk Live. Mark, aren't you planning a trip down there?
I am planning a trip to Google.
Is that this year?
To Cuba. Yes, this year.
Oh, cool. That'll be interesting.
Yep. The folks from Freedom Fest are actually putting on a Cuban tour, and I figured, well, if I'm going to go, I might as well go with those folks.
Right on. It's going to be interesting because things are changing over there in Cuba. I mean, now you've got the United States has loosened the restrictions as of the Obama administration.
That's true, but they always could do business with Canada.
Sure. Yeah,
so,
that's true.
I mean,
you could fly there from Canada too, right? Secretly or something like that in the past.
Yeah, if you really wanted to.
Yeah. Extra steps.
Yeah. If you wanted to get to Cuba as an American,
you could have.
You could have.
Yeah. But now it's easier, and that's a good thing because it means more people are going to go. More people are going to connect with the Cuban people from the United States, and that can only
a good thing.
Yeah, that can only result in good
care.
things.
Right. And I understand why many Cubans who are living in the United States are bitter about these things, but at some point or another, you just got to let it go.
So they signed up for a new constitution in a vote, which was very, very well attended. Apparently, over 80% voted in favor of the new constitution. It was approved by the National Assembly late last year. This is according to Al Jazeera. It enshrines private property.
Interesting.
And
enshrines.
Yeah, and promotes foreign investment. State enterprise does remain the cornerstone of the economy, however, though the new constitution dictates that state-owned companies have autonomous management. So it sounds kind of like China almost there.
Yeah.
On the political front, the document limits the president to 2 consecutive 5-year terms, so no more lifetime presidencies. But does not open the door for Cubans to elect the president directly. The Communist Party remains the central political force in its one-party system.
Hey, that sounds a lot like China.
Jose Hassan Nives, editor of the non-state media outlet. Who knew?
Yeah, who knew? I imagine Cuba saw how China is pulling this off and said, well, we want some of that.
Try that here.
Some of that sweet, sweet cheddar.
Yeah. Apparently, the non-state media outlet is named El Toque, told Al Jazeera by legalizing economic measures put in practice in recent years. The new constitution adapts to a set of reforms that are already underway. So basically, this is making it official, what they've already been doing, which is to say, allowing private property in Cuba.
So no eminent domain?
I don't think
not that kind of private property.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that too private property?
Actual private property, sorry.
All right, more on the way here. The toll-free number is 855-450-FREE. That's 855-450-3733. This is Free Talk Live. So we're talking about Cuba and the vote that, according to Al Jazeera, was turnout was 84.4%, and about 86 or about 87% of the voters voted in favor of the new constitution, which, according to the story, enshrines private property. It legalizes private property and promotes foreign investment, which they say brings it in line with the economic reforms the Cuban government has implemented to encourage entrepreneurship and investment over the past several years, which is a good thing.
So the next despotic government can take over all that investment and private property that they doled out.
Well, I mean, certainly that could happen, but hopefully they won't kill the golden goose. You know, things have been pretty bad in Cuba from what we've read. Now, none of us have actually been there. Mark, you'll be going there later this year at some point. So you'll, I'm sure, be calling us from down there and giving us the scoop
as best I can
on what things are actually like down there. Because until you actually go, you have to rely on what other people say.
Of course,
you have to rely on the mainstream media or somebody that you might happen to have known who has gone there. We know Carlos Miller formerly from Photography is Not a Crime, one of the great websites that unfortunately has. I don't know if it's shut down, but Carlos got rid of it, and I'm not sure what its current status is. It was a great site at one time.
I thought it got usurped before he got rid of it. Like someone took
there was
it
some
over.
drama.
Yeah,
there was definitely some drama. He went to Cuba and kind of was posting updates on social media from down there and said the internet was god awful. Even at like the fancy 4 or 5 star hotel or whatever it was, the nice hotel that he was at, the internet was just spotty at best, and when he did have access, it was slow. However, that's also something that's changing in Cuba, according to the Associated Press. There's a big change where people in Cuba are now getting access to the internet on cell phones, and for people that haven't had that, that's a huge step forward.
The internet's a dangerous thing for governments.
Right.
People get a taste of freedom and they like it. But generally, we are a species that likes freedom.
After a tornado had slammed Havana, as the AP, in late January, Miguel Ramirez complained on Twitter that authorities were threatening to evict him from his damaged home. A week later, he said the government changed its mind and would help him rebuild the house. Jorge Luis Leon used the official Twitter account of a Cuban vice president to request that hospital waiting rooms have seating for family members, while a group of young people launched Sube, a ride-hailing app for the aging American sedans that ply the streets of Havana. In the 2.5 months since Cuba allowed its citizens internet access via cell phones, fast-moving changes are subtle but palpable as Cubans challenge government officials online, post photos of filthy school bathrooms, and drag what was one of the world's least connected countries into the digital age.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be a while before they get that connected, though.
Communist authorities, in turn, are having to learn how to deal with more visible pressure coming from outside of party-controlled popular and neighborhood committees. Life has changed, said Alberto Cabrera, age 25. He's part of the team that developed the Sube app. He says, you see it when you walk down the street. The other day, looking from the roof of my house, I could see that a neighbor had mobile internet service, as did the person in front and the person beyond him. You never saw that before, he said. In the first 40 days since December 6th, when people could start buying internet access packages for 3G service, 1.8 million Cubans on the island of 11 million purchased the services. A government report,
money
wherever they can.
Yeah.
A government report last week said about 6.4 million residents use the internet and social networks. Previously, nearly all Cubans could use mobile phones to link only to their state-run email accounts. Can you imagine state-run email accounts?
Sure, we have it in prisons here in the United States.
Yeah, right. Unless they connected to the internet at a limited number of government-sponsored Wi-Fi spots. So it's opened up quite a bit. Now, I suspect the government's still the organization running the internet access. That would be my guess.
Yeah, I was going to say, is it an open internet where they have access to like all the World Wide Web, or is it kind of like firewalled off?
That's an excellent question. Claudia Cuevas, 26, university professor, member of the Sube team, says we're in a process of learning about how to use the data packages.
We can't let them on Facebook because they'll influence American elections.
Oh, no.
She says before, you went to the park with Wi-Fi zones once a week to communicate with your family. The history of the internet in Cuba has been rife with tensions and suspicion since it began in the 90s. Cuba's government accused Washington of blocking its access to the fiber optical cables near the island, forcing it to use an expensive and slow satellite service. It was only in 2011 that Cuba got access to the submarine cable with the help of Venezuela. And it wasn't until 2015 that the general population gained access through the opening of Wi-Fi points in hundreds of parks. Critics of the communist government said it resisted giving Cubans free access to the internet because it feared a free inflow of information. And government supporters said it was fighting efforts by Washington to undermine their communist system and revolution.
Right,
revolution. Waking up in the future.
They really love that whole revolution thing.
It's still going.
You don't have a revolution anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry, they're the status quo. You're the man. You're the one that they want to have a revolution against now.
According to the story here, people questioned by the AP agreed that using the internet's become more practical since the recent arrival of cell phone access. They're moving from state telephone company ETECSA to WhatsApp, searching for information on the internet and reaching out to government officials through Facebook and Twitter. A DJ, Julio Luison, who has a YouTube channel for a year called Techno Like Cuba, said he's noticed the impact. Quote, previously the country with the most subscribers to my channel was Spain, followed by the United States, and Cuba third. Now, he says, his highest numbers are Cubans. Guerra said, however, there are still many limitations from both outside and inside Cuba. For example, there are obstacles facing local developers who want to enter their products on the Google Play Store, and in Cuba, developers face a paralysis in the delivery of operating licenses so they can work within a legal framework.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so
there you go right there.
Some level of government control going on here. The Cuban president, Miguel Diaz-Canel, opened a Twitter account in December or prior to December, and recently ordered all his ministers and leaders to do the same, but many of them only retweet official messages or propaganda slogans without providing their own content or answering anyone's questions. Diaz-Canel has repeated the importance of the internet and says Cuban authorities are working on websites and platforms to provide government services, such as requesting a birth certificate or being able to fill in government forms that now must be done by hand. Isn't that cute?
So you can use Twitter to petition your government for redress now?
Apparently. And an example of growing the use of the internet and social media was the reaction via Facebook and Twitter to a tornado that devastated half of Havana in late January. Residents used the platforms to assess the damage and organize solidarity. The combination of internet access and social networks, quote, is a channel that people can use to say things as they are directly. We need this, or this is happening. It cannot be blocked, and people must see it as a way to express themselves and say what they think. So I think that's wonderful. I really do. I think it's encouraging to see that not only does Cuba have private property enshrined in their constitution now, but in December they got access for anyone who's willing to pay for it now through their cell phone provider to personal internet access. We don't know about restrictions on what they can access, but we know that it's a heck of a lot more than they ever had access to.
It's definitely a step in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I support it. I feel for Cubans that are alive today living in America whose property is owned by the Cuban government, controlled by the Cuban government, and they're angry.
Never going to get it back. Sorry.
They're just not.
But there must be a way to return it to the original owner.
Well, the original owner is probably not the Cuban who is complaining about it. It's probably some drop of Indian blood somewhere in some person. That's the difficulty with property. It's been around a long time, and lots of people have killed each other over it.
And the funny thing is, I think we were talking about the rankings of economic and personal freedom, and I don't think Cuba was on that list. It was one of those countries that wasn't on the list.
It's probably too complicated.
Yeah. So, but it's still good news. Glad to see it happening. And we'll know more, I guess, Mark, when you get down there later on this year. More coming up tomorrow night. You can join us online in the meantime over at freetalklive.com.
Free Talk Live. Listen live 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern or grab the podcast. It's all at freetalklive.com.